Well, I guess that might adjourn the meeting a little bit faster if we just ask how much money we have. Okay. I'd like to call to order the March 17th, 2011 Human Services Committee meeting. Once again, I want to remind everybody Happy St. Patrick's Day if that's allowed. As I can look out in the audience, I don't see anybody, but I would like to open up courtesy floor. Tonight's discussion is basically going to be Pennsylvania Human Services budget and its effect on Northampton County's Human Services Department. Let the record show nobody came forward. And once again, our great familiar face, Mr. Ross Marcus, is here to explain to us how our governor has maybe changed a little bit of course of plans for us for 2011 and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Marcus.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Ever since Governor Corbett was elected in November, we've been reading about his intent to balance the state's budget by cutting costs and not increasing any taxes or new taxes or fees. Therefore, we expected the worst when he would come out with the 11-12 budget. There were rumors that we should expect at least a 15% cut in our various funding streams that are controlled by the state. So when the governor unveiled his budget last week, we were actually pleasantly surprised and relieved that the cuts were not as severe as anticipated. But on the other hand, we know that we cannot take this for granted as if it is a done deal. As you probably know, the state colleges and universities had all their funding reduced in half from the state. School districts were cut dramatically by the state. And we know that there will be efforts to restore at least part, if not all, of that funding. In addition, community and economic development was hit hard, and there will be efforts to restore some of that funding in the next couple of months. So since DPW, the Pennsylvania Department of Public Welfare, was one of the few departments to receive an increase in funding in their budget, their programs are already under scrutiny. Why did you leave welfare alone? So we know that there's sort of a target on the backs of many of our programs, and that they may be subject for discussions over the next couple of months as it goes through the legislative process. But in the governor's budget, there are some areas of concern to us. First and foremost is the proposed elimination of the Human Services Development Fund. Monetarily, it is not a major loss. It is $360,000 in round numbers. However, it is by far our most flexible funding stream that we have. It is, in essence, a block grant. Its primary purpose was to assist adults who were not yet old enough for senior programming or senior services, too old for children's services, and did not qualify for any specialized program like mental health, drug and alcohol, or any of the other specific funding streams. But allowed costs are very broad under this program, and we could use it for a wide range of purposes, and we have over the years. You may remember when we were discussing the 2007 budget, excuse me, at that time, we were going to have to increase or cut back dramatically our services in aging. One of the ways of helping to fill in the gap was plugging in Human Service Development Fund monies. More recently, I think it was about 2 years ago, the same thing happened in Children, Youth, and Families. They had an unexpected increase in the number of placements that put them behind or overextended in their expenses, and so we moved money into pick up children youth services. Please note that when we do that with the different categorical funds, we do not actually pick up staff costs. We pick up service costs. That's an important distinction. We never pay for our staff out of HSDF. So that in the case of aging, they would pay for other services that are provided by the Area Agency on Aging. And the same thing with children and youth. The other major use of the money has been for a wide variety of community services, mostly focusing on maintaining the independence and self-sufficiency of those who are most limited in their physical abilities. So we fund Meals on Wheels to help those who are non-elderly but homebound. The same thing with Homemaker Health Aides, because there are no other funding streams to help adults who are not old enough to qualify for senior services. We also fund information referral services, some housing-related counseling, employment counseling, and a variety of other services. Again, all aimed at adults. All that is being jeopardized. And that is what the message you will hear first and foremost from CCAP, is trying to preserve HSDF. In the past 3 years, the Rendell administration cut HSDF by 37%. So the $360,000 at one point was probably closer to about $500,000. So we've already absorbed quite a few cuts over the past 3 years, and we fully expected to take another round of cuts this year. We were not expecting the elimination of the program. The second area that's of major concern to me overall is the Area Agency on Aging. I've shared with you almost since the first day I've been here, it's now 5 years, that the financial troubles of the Area Agency on Aging. And if you remember, in the 2008 budget, we increased the county contribution from plus or minus $300,000 to up to $800,000, and we did that for 2 years. We promised you that as soon as we could cut it back a little bit, we would. In 2010, so 2008, 2009, it went from $300,000 to about $800,000. And then 2010, 2011, it's been around $600,000 each year in county contribution. What we are what is in the governor's proposed budget, though, is a part of their program that is not directly budgetary, and that is the medical assistance waiver program. And what that is to qualify for the waiver, an elderly resident must be nursing facility clinically eligible. So in other words, that's a technical term for just saying that they're nursing home eligible as determined by the Area Agency on Aging, and medical assistance eligible. We qualify them for the program. We make arrangements for the services, but the state pays all of the bills directly. Under the program, we have 170 slots, but we also have 6 slots in growth capacity. And what that means, every month we can add 6 people, because the state knows that there will be certain people coming off the list. They might move into some sort of assisted living facility or nursing home, or they might pass away. Either way, they know that there's going to be a certain number of slots opening up. So, for example, 1 month we might add 6 and none come off. The next month we might add 6, but 10 come off. We never know how many will be removed from the program. We just know we have the capacity to add 6 a month. That growth capacity is going, under the governor's proposed budget, will be taken away from us. So the only opportunity to add people to the MA waiver is when an opening occurs. So what that does then is that puts pressure on our base funding. It's called the Aging Block Grant, and that's a combined federal-state program. And that's where we run into trouble. Currently, or just recently, let's go back and give historical. There is something called the functional needs measurement. It's an acuity scale where you've heard this discussion before. Okay. And what happens on this scale is we ask a series of questions, and the resident is then scored on the answers to the questions. And it's a way of measuring need for services. When I first joined the county, we were at 55 that you needed to qualify. And the higher the number, the more the need. And as a result of the strain in the budget, we increased it to 75, which was a dramatic change. When we added the $500,000 in 2008, we then decreased it to 60. As a result of the tightness in the budget and the increasing demand, we've now had to increase it to 68. In addition, we've had to remove 119 elderly from our services. We've had to remove services for 119 individuals. This is just happening now. This is part of trying to live with a tighter budget. Excuse me. Excuse me. One of the issues that we've been talking about for the last several years is a greater need for money, and how Northampton County, the growth in Northampton County, thank you, John, has not been taken into consideration. There have been various efforts over the years to change the funding formula. And again, many of you have heard this for many years. Under all of the revised formulas, Northampton County would receive more money. That is beyond doubt. The amount depends on which formula you use. I've seen some with $400,000 increases up to $900,000 increases in annual budget. So if we received the change in the formula, that would be a dramatic improvement in our overall situation. The 119 people who are being cut, their cost to us is around $350,000. The current formula being talked about would give us about $400,000 more than what we currently receive. Well, in the past, no, because the big loser in the formula was Philadelphia. And under Governor Rendell, that wasn't going to happen. So, Governor Corbett's from Western Pennsylvania, so I'm not sure how Allegheny County, this formula affects Allegheny County, so I'm not sure.
There's one point that also, with the latest census, we're like the third largest county now in Pennsylvania, so I thought we would have another third.
No, we're not third.
No, we're about maybe 10th or 12th.
Okay, then I listened to the wrong speech the other night, but they were talking about, as far as that, we should be able to start soliciting a little bit more, action from this formula change I've been hearing for about a year now. Well, that's how long I've been on council. And we figure that somehow anticipate that maybe we were able to try to expedite that change. Is that being too hopeful or too wishful?
The aging secretary that just left office, the aging secretary under Governor Rendell, his goal was to have it done and passed before he left office. Obviously, he wasn't successful. So I'm not sure when it will ever be done. It's been talked about, Mr. Dietrich, since before I arrived at the county. And that's 5 years.
So that's something we could be talking to our legislators.
Absolutely.
I think Mr. Marcus probably has a suggestion at the end of this.
Yes.
I'm sure.
That's one of them, HSDF. That's why I'm highlighting those two areas. As far as action items for county council and for us as the administration, those are the two areas that are the highest priorities to us.
Mr. Teacher, can I speak?
Ms. Marks, you have no problems?
About this issue.
Okay.
Because Ross and I have talked about this. I hate to see 118 people lose their service, but we have not talked about what would happen if Greystale would sell. We haven't talked about the money that we would garner from that. And what I'm going to recommend to you, if Greystale is sold, is that we take $2 million of that money and put it into the Area Agency on Aging for the first year, and $1.5 million for the second, and $1 million for the third. Because I think there's an opportunity here for a philosophical change in how we treat the elderly. Nobody wants to die in a nursing home. I've told you that before. If I asked each one of you, where do you want to die, you'd probably say, you want to die at home. And so if we sell Greystale and if we have that money, I think this is the time to put more money into the Area Agency on Aging for the programs that Ross has discussed. Otherwise, it's going to be a slow dissipation of services. And frankly, if I were the king in this county, rather than put $7 million into Greystale, I'd put it into the Area Agency on Aging if I had that choice. Because these are the programs that keep people out of nursing homes, keep them in their home where most people want to be, and that's where we ought to be on the forefront of that. I think that this is a chance to do some of that.
But what would happen then at the end of the 2 years?
I think
Funding would go away.
I think at the end of 3 years, I'm talking about a 3-year plan.
3-year program.
2, 1.5, and 1.
Okay.
Hopefully the economy would improve. I don't know whether it ever is going to, but if it would, if this funding formula ever gets straightened out, in my executive director's report tonight, the population went up to 297,000. We grew almost by 12%. And we need to start getting our share of what money we should be getting. So that would increase a little bit of the aging allocation. It's not the full answer. I believe philosophically, just like I believe in rehab for people in the jail, not just throwing the key away, that we need to that Greystale should be a rehab turnaround facility, and that people should have the services in their home. And that's one of the things I would propose with.
Well, the one thing that majorly concerns me about that is that you're looking for a temporary fix to what's been a long-term problem of inactivity out of Harrisburg. I mean, their obligation was to meet the needs of these programs. They have told us that they fund them, and what we're doing is taking county dollars to fill in them basically just kicking the can down the alley.
Yeah, and the same thing has happened, because I've been around a long time. I was around when these programs started. And the promise was, when the counties took them over in the 60s and 70s, we'll give you 90% of the money, you come up with 10%. And that was like a marriage vow. But over the years, that marriage vow has faltered because the Commonwealth has reneged on a lot of things. I think in children and youth, we must be up to 18, 19% match.
Yes.
In a lot of the programs, the county match has grown and grown over the years that have ensued. But that's where, if we don't have a strong relationship with our legislators to protect that, because people come and go and they forget that. Many of the legislators we have today weren't around when those early promises were made. But if you go back to the early legislation, MHMR Act of '66 and some of this other stuff, it was 90-10, and some of it was 100%. And it has all changed with more of it being asked for from the county. And when we put you remember that when we put the $500,000 additional in, the same thing we had facing us then is what we're facing us now. Who's going to decide who the 118 people are who aren't going to get the service?
Well, apparently it sounds like Harrisburg is.
No, we're going to have to.
No, I mean, as far as we don't get to pick anything as far as who the individuals are, but we have to set standards in a point system that's based on our funding from Harrisburg.
Right. Well,
so they're setting what our abilities to meet their responsibilities.
Well, Ross feels good about going back to 55, 60%. I want to go down to like 40%. That's not good enough to me in terms of that priority scale for the service. I mean, you've got to be pretty darn bad off to get something from our programs right now. It's not right. Anyway, that's one of the proposals I would make for you if we suddenly had access to a significant amount of money.
And I think Mr. Marcus might have a solution. Maybe we can try to motivate the legislation to move in the proper direction.
I think it's going to take
Miracle
a...
worker, rainmaker?
I think it's going to take a group effort among all the counties that stand to gain. And, I don't like pitting county against county, but at some point we have to advocate for ourselves. Because we're, as Mr. Stofa just mentioned, we're a rapidly growing county, we're an aging county. We need to advocate for ourselves.
I think you're absolutely right, Ross, and I think it's not only the area of human service. On a regular basis, the Commonwealth has made promises to local government, be it county or school district or otherwise, and they've regularly reneged on that. Reneged on their contribution to pension plans, they've reneged on their contribution to community colleges, they've reneged on their contribution to human services programs. In some regard, I guess the only other way one looks at that is that it could be paying more taxes to Harrisburg for them to keep more and give us less. But quite frankly, they've not been good stewards of our money. And I think finally we may be having some people in Harrisburg representing us locally that have enough seniority and perhaps enough clout to really have an impact. Done the same thing to us in transportation budget.
But in this particular case, the change in the formula is not increasing the overall pot. All it is changing the split. And what does it say when certain counties stand to lose no matter what the formula? Maybe it means that they shouldn't be receiving that much money. And at some point, fairness has to be part of the equation.
I agree.
So, I do want to apologize. I did misstate a number before. When I was talking to you, I said 119 would lose services. It's actually 118. One became eligible for the waiver, so that 119th person was put in the waiver instead of being cut from the program.
That's good news.
Yeah. All right. Continuing on. The next one in severity would be drug and alcohol services. This one's going to be a little difficult to explain, so please bear with me. There's a program called Act 152. Through this program, we receive $610,000 a year. It is being moved to Health Choices. The reason it's significant for us is the way we use the money is when a person is in need of residential care for drug and alcohol services, they are often Medicaid eligible. But Medicaid, the welfare office can take up to 30 days to process the application. The Act 152 money paid for the services for that first 30 days so that there wasn't a delay in the person receiving services. When you have someone who is addicted to alcohol or other drugs, you don't want them to wait. When they come to you and say, I need help, you want to be able to help them as quickly as possible. The other part of the loss is that 15% of that money went to case management services. So about 90,000 of the 610 helped DNA defray the costs of assisting those individuals. So that is a direct loss to the county. We will be losing that 15%, so that's another 90,000. And the other part of it is that there was a nice continuum of services set up within drug and alcohol where a person came to us, we helped them get the assistance short-term through Act 152, we helped them get on medical assistance, and then when they came out of the residential program, we helped them get into outpatient programs so they less chance of relapse. We may not know about them now because they aren't going to be coming to us on the front end. And so there's now a greater chance of relapse. The other big issue is that it was very important to the drug and alcohol community to have a Department of Drug and Alcohol Services. That was passed by the legislature, but the funding of the department was delayed a year, and Governor Corbett has decided not to again fund it this year, so that's another can that's been sort of kicked down the road. Children, youth, and families, minor reductions, 1% to 2%, but the concern there is since the beginning of the year, we've had over a 10% increase in placements. That's probably directly related to the economy. We were running in the low 200s, 210, 220 in early January. We were around 225. The end of February, we were up to 250. So that is another area of significant concern. We were whittling it down nicely. In general, the other divisions, mental health, developmental programs, and the base funding for DNA, we may have received minor cuts, but overall we were held harmless. The problem there is that in many of the grant programs, we've been held harmless for years, or maybe received a 1% cost of living adjustment. So we've been falling behind for many, many years. I know this is not the year to ask for increases, for more money, but how many years can we really be expected to hold the line on the amount of money that we're receiving? Personnel costs are going up, the providers want additional funding, so there's a lot less services. So with each passing year, it becomes more and more of a concern. On the good news side is that there was talk about eliminating the county's health choices programs, that they would be brought back to the state and put out for bid the way they put out the physical health component, so that the behavioral health would work the way the physical health does, which is done on a big regional basis. It's all administered in Harrisburg. The push behind this is with the physical health managed care organizations. They see this as a moneymaker, and so they are the ones that are advocating for this change. Governor Corbett left, it's called the carve-out. He left the carve-out in place for now, but that is something we're going to have to watch, because there's going to be pressure with each year's budget to eliminate the carve-out and bring the control back to Harrisburg. The other thing regarding the future is we know that there is talk about creating block grants, where you would take several pots of money and put them together. On the upside, it would give us more flexibility, but on the significant downside is we realize that that always comes with a funding decrease. They lump it together and they cut it by 15, 20, 25%. So there's still lots of areas of concern, but the initial news wasn't horrible.
I'm trying to figure out what part of that wasn't horrible. Sorry.
Well, compared to what we were expecting. We were expecting massive cuts, and we did not get massive cuts. We were talking about cuts $10, $20 million is what we were thinking in terms of across the system, and we did not get that.
Now, you're talking about some programs which are going to have to reduce the number of people that we can serve.
Aging is the primary one.
And again, one of the two most vulnerable populations we have. CYF, if someone is adjudicated, we have no choice but to meet their need, right?
Yes. If someone is determined to be dependent, then we have no choice but to serve them. If someone is adjudicated as delinquent, that's done through JPO. Right. But again, we have no choice but to serve them. As some of you may not remember, that juvenile probation and children, youth, and families share the Act 148 money, which is the money that comes from Harrisburg for child welfare. Most of it, more of it goes to CYF, but a large part of it does go to JPO. So either way, the decision is taken out of our hands, and that's why the placement number becomes such a wild card, because we never can tell you how many families are going to need placement, and also a lot of it depends on the number of children.
We would have budgeted 200, and we're now looking at 225 or more.
Right.
on a monthly basis, we've got a significant increase in costs.
Exactly. And one of the things that's hurting us right now is, for whatever reason, more of the kids are older. They are more difficult, as you know, are more difficult to put in foster homes and actually need facilities,
Right.
which are more expensive.
Residential care as opposed to foster care.
Yes.
Ross, you want to talk about the federal issues the state has with, I mean, it seems like the money's okay, but it may not be in terms of what they have to.
Yeah, what Mr. Stoff is referring to is, you may remember that several years ago, there was a problem with Title IV-E money. That's been an ongoing battle, and that is money that comes from HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, on the federal level to the state and then on to the counties. They did not like the way we were administering this program in Pennsylvania, not Northampton County specifically, in Pennsylvania. And they recently, so there was all sorts of back and forth, and if you remember, we had millions of dollars being held up that was owed to us, but the state wasn't paying us because the feds were not paying them. For the most part, that was resolved, but the most recent study that they came in and evaluated Pennsylvania, I think it was Allegheny County.
It was.
Okay. It did not go well, evidently. And so now they're talking about what will be the ramifications of that. Is that what you were referring to? Okay.
I guess they're extrapolating that and saying if it's the situation in Allegheny County, they're going to apply the same measure to everybody else.
Yeah. And the question is that fair? Is that was that a fair evaluation of what was going on in Allegheny County? So that's another one of those stay tuned issues. If that goes against us, that's a big issue because that money does not have to be matched. Unlike the state funds where we have to match somewhere between 20 and 50%, depending on the type of service, the federal funds do not have to be matched. So those are obviously the best funds to have.
Well, what,
I don't think people realize how many people we serve. We serve like 14,000, 15,000.
That was the question I was going to ask.
Yeah. It is
We serve a lot of people.
It is a dramatic number. I can get you that. Every once in a while, somebody asks me to update it. I'll have it updated, and I'll get that to Mr. Flisser in the next week or so. But it is a dramatic number.
The population numbers and the numbers served kind of go up in lockstep, or does the number served going up at a faster rate than population?
The numbers served, we find that it has a lot to do with the economy. There are certain aspects of what we do where not only are we getting more cases, but the complexity of the cases is much greater. Some of the needs that we are seeing, some of the neighborhoods we're going into are neighborhoods that we really never thought we would have to go into. Solidly, what we would consider solidly middle-class neighborhoods, where due to the economy, people have lost jobs, families have broken up, all the pressures of a downturn in the economy are impacting the families, and that puts stressors on it, which might create
Plus
mental
behavioral
health
issues.
needs, drug and alcohol, child welfare, the whole gamut of services.
Curious, have you noticed any increase in needs because of the gambling of fans and the gambling issue, other than that young man who said he was robbed and lost money gambling kind of thing like that?
We have some anecdotal type of evidence, but we do not have any good data because most of the time that people come to us, they are not willing to talk about their gambling problems. So they might come to us saying they're in need of rent money, or they're in need of utility assistance, or they don't have any food for their children. And we try to drill down and find out, why exactly the problem is. But sometimes they aren't forthcoming about their gambling problems, just like they might not want to disclose a drug or alcohol problem. It's an addiction, a compulsive behavior, so it's relatively similar.
And the one thing we have not seen that I think some of us expected was a increase in crime. One time we were looking to maybe have an additional magistrate, which I don't think is necessary, so that's been a
Well, there's been
positive.
quite a few stories coming out of the city of Bethlehem for the last several months of home invasions and everything that weren't probably headlines a couple of years prior. So some people might argue that the crime has been affecting, and it seems to be more horrific.
Although I think Bethlehem reported a reduction in crime. Remember?
No, it
was
went up.
Was it? All right.
Well, one of the things that, when Mr. Stofa had the Gambling Commission looking at the issue of gambling issues, we found out from other casinos that usually the human services lag a couple years behind the opening of the casino. So it's really soon that if we hold true to what others have experienced, it should be about now that we start seeing those experiences. Especially now, I would expect there's going to be more pressure now that there's table games.
We've seen some, since Hellertown has the 412 state road that goes through, we've seen some increase. I mean, it's in the paper. A vehicle was in an accident. They found significant number of amount of drugs, and they were trafficking, I guess, from Philly up to Bethlehem and further north. And it was kind of stuff you see in the news that you don't remember seeing like 8 years ago. So, and it seems we all kind of focused recently since the casino opened. Now, I'm just kind of pointing out maybe a coincidence there. I'm not, expert on statistics or following this, but I do have some elected officials that come back and are pointing out the increase in number population or traffic usually just results in just an increase of like motor vehicle accidents and other minor crimes that might not be, currently fully tracked. So I'm getting everybody's opinion that they have seen an increase in crime, whether it's petty or severe. You pointed out, where do we go from here? That's probably the best. I mean, we could very well take what Harrisburg has told us what to work with, or we can't. Regardless, we have to serve the people. How do you anticipate that this might be just the beginning of further cuts down the line? How do we draw the line on what we can and can't do, and hold Harrisburg more responsible towards that marriage vow that they committed?
Well,
I know. I know. Just assume that I might be new here and more idealistic than I haven't broken yet, I guess.
I think what we need to do is set up some sort of. Mr. Stoff has been talking about, and you and I have spoken about setting up some sort of meeting with legislators.
Just to remind them of that promise, since we do have some fresh faces in Harrisburg.
And also to remind them of the services that are being provided. They hear a lot of stories. It's very quick to anything negative that happens spreads very quickly. Evidently, there was some sort of one of the counties was using HSDF money to pay for taxi cab fares, and evidently the whole legislature, both Senate and House, all know about it, and they've attributed it to all 67 counties. So what we need to do is tell them how we really use the money. Because no matter who I talk to about Human Services Development Fund, they sort of shake their head and say, yeah, that makes sense. So we need to get out there and do that. And so as the committee has the opportunity, I would ask that we do it as soon as possible, because this is prime time. Between now, I heard the other day that the goal is to have the budget passed by Memorial Day. I don't know if they'll pull it off. That would be a month early, but
Pretty amazing.
That's what I heard.
Which means that we have a little bit less time as far as to try to gain some influence.
Exactly. We have April and May, if that's accurate.
Okay, I guess we'll be looking at that later, as far as, I don't know, you state that it's not as horrible as it could have been, but for some reason, I thought our budget was pretty tight to begin with.
It is.
And here we are looking at trying to do the same with less, and we have more people to serve.
And again, going back to aging, if you remember, we eliminated 5 positions in the budget for 2011, and right now we're holding one vacant that we are not filling. So that would be 6 positions in over this calendar year. Some of the divisions really are hurting.
Yeah.
And the staff are being really stretched very, very thin.
I think the reality is we will serve fewer people.
No
That's the reality.
No, we don't have the resources to serve more people, or the same, from the sounds of it.
The question really goes back, again, to Reverend Dowd's point about, okay, if these are mandated services that we have to provide, how do we then do it? And that's the question I haven't yet come up with an answer to. What we're doing slowly but surely is all the preventative services that we believe in, those are slowly being eliminated because those are the first to go, because they are not mandated services. They're important, they're helpful, they're useful, but and that's dangerous because then that just creates more need.
That could generate more people in turmoil later
Exactly.
on. It costs us more, and
Exactly. Just like it's cheaper to prevent crime and to work with people who might commit crimes rather than to put them in a prison. But we don't have the funding to do that.
well, does anybody else have questions for Mr. Marcus?
No, there's just an observation. You know, I'm trying to count here. Thanks to the gerrymandering, I think we have at least 3 state senators, I believe, and I think
it's more.
or more state.
Yeah, the northern part of the county is represented by
We have Bench,
That's from Boscola.
Brown
Brown.
and northern one.
What's that?
Who's the guy that represents Schuylkill, Carbon?
Dave Argyle?
Yeah.
It's Dave, right?
Yeah.
Dave Argyle.
Argyle, that's
Right,
right.
it's a
He
4.
has-
He has the
Fourth.
northern part of the county.
It's very small, but we still should have his ear, right?
Yeah.
A couple of them there, and then at least 6 state reps.
Not sure.
I think it's more than that.
We have Farhart, Samuelson, Brennan, Owen, Emmerich,
Freeman.
The person who succeeded,
Simmons?
Simmons?
Justin?
Simmons.
Yes, he has whoever's involved in there.
yeah,
So we should have be able to get somebody's here.
Well, in our
Well,
budget,
and-
we could probably sit down with them and maybe get Happy Meals or something. We might be able to afford that. Probably not, right?
and Pat Brown has moved up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pat Brown's.
He's whip now in the Senate.
Bob Freeman, he's been there a long time.
Remember, this is like, including Graysdale, like 62% of our budget.
Yes.
This is a big part of what we do in the county.
Understood. Human Services is the
Yeah.
biggest part of the budget as one group. And of course, that's where they're cutting us. Any word on, oh no, that's not, I'm just thinking about all the other facets of county government and everything. But anybody else have questions for Mr. Marcus?
I just think Ross is right. I think that we've seen the tip of the iceberg, but I think when the education people get in there and begin to swing hard, and there could be a lot of parents. I'm just thinking that if my daughter were still a student next semester, I'd be concerned. Mm-hmm. So I think there'll be a lot of parents who are going to be bringing pressure. I think it's going to be a never-ending stream of people, of interest groups.
The president of Temple talked about a large tuition increase. Some of the state system
Kutztown
schools have
talked
talked.
about one.
Down was in the paper.
Yeah.
Yep.
Penn State has talked about closing some of its
Satellite
campuses.
yes.
So yes, there's no question they're going to be pushing back. And I've heard some people who are more cynical saying that the governor did that to avoid making the tough cuts
Oh,
that he made, the cut to the popular programs, knowing that they would never be passed. So, who knows?
Well, I'm always trying to see what's going on. This could be just beginning. That's why probably more of a presence as far as Northampton County is we take care of our people, and expecting the funds to follow suit would be important.
Medicaid reimbursement?
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot that. They do not, for some reason, the way the budget is written, it was tough to determine exactly, but the Medicaid reimbursement rate for Graysdale will be somewhere between flat and a 2% reduction. And, again, this is something that we suspected would happen in this administration, which is all the more reason that, maybe it is time to sell Graysdale.
Someone mentioned to me there might also be a change in their rate for private homes as well.
Didn't read that. I did read what Mark.
Yeah.
That rate that you stated wasn't across the board. That's just the county-run facilities or just county services?
Yes, remember, our rate
Is lower.
is flat. And so therefore, all we get is cost of living adjustments or subtractions. What I think Reverend Dowd is talking about is the case mix index, which impacts the county, the private providers. It sounds like they might be doing something there.
I understand there may be.
There's some talk about that Graysdale was a private entity, that they would receive X amount of money.
Yeah.
$4 million.
4 million, yes.
Yeah, I was wondering if the change is universal, or is it just, once again, we're taking a hit while private facilities, we're taking a hit?
So a 2% reduction for us in our state funding from Graysdale is a significant impact.
Oh, absolutely. Don't forget, 85% of the residents at Graysdale, roughly,
Yeah.
are paid for by medical assistance, and that's the fund they're looking to cut
Yeah.
by something. It's somewhere between 0 and 2%.
600? Wow. Sorry, just
Remember,
thinking about the numbers.
This group of people we're dealing with does not have strong advocacy. The universities would. They've got students, they've got parents, the people we deal with, and there's a perception that a lot of these folks don't vote. I don't know whether that's true or not, but
Well,
that's the perception people have.
When our numbers tell, because Graysdale is one of the polling places, so they should be able to track. Well, we also have the whole families and everything,
Never
so
looked
we have
at
to
that.
keep track.
It'd be interesting.
So thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah.
I apologize, I forgot about Graysdale.
That wasn't good news, so why?
I'm just trying to get my arms around what kind of number that would be.
I can get it for the full meeting. I'm sorry, I didn't bring the Graysdale budget.
400,000 or 500,000.
That's my thought. So it's got to be in that range.
Yeah. Yes.
666.
And one of the things that the welfare secretary designate made his name for in Rhode Island is cutting medical assistance costs. And so clearly that's going to be a major emphasis under this administration. So I think that rate, if anything, is going to continue to decline.
If there's no further questions, thank you very much, Mr. Marcus.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Seems to be a few more people in the audience. If anybody would like to comment on some of the information they heard tonight, this would be the opportunity. The record showed no one came forward. And I'd like to thank everybody for showing up and adjourn the meeting for March 17th.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Hey,
Mr.
Ross,
Marcus.
thank you.